Hello, I am Storm Meyer, and this is my presentation for Module 10, Helping Students Realize Their Learning Norms for EDU852. Within this presentation, we're going to look at 10 student learning norms for engagement. They are listed as you can see here. And as we go through, I'm going to try to give the two perspectives that students may have on those norms, and then something that I do as practice within my own classroom to try to improve these norms and engagement. Our first is relationships. Um, Students have the thoughts of, are they lost in a crowd? Am I just another face? Or, do the teachers really want to know who they are, what they're interested in, and are the teachers helping them to form relationships with their peers, with coaches, and with other role models within the building or community? One way I try to do this is by meeting my students first at the door. Another way that I try to incorporate this is that, while not always viewed as best practice, not everything that happens in my classroom is content related. Sometimes my bell ringers are based on relationship building, getting to know students, have a conversation, just relating to them as individuals, because they're not just students and I'm not just a teacher. The second piece is relevance. Students want to know, am I jumping through hoops, or is their learning applicable? Are they going to be able to apply this to something? Within my history classroom, I tell kids that it's not always relevant for them to memorize dates, battle statistics, things like that throughout history. But it is relevant to know, how did people get to the place that they're getting? So I really try to teach from a human perspective, and we try to compare to a lot of current events and issues that are just relatable to their lives. Number 3 is time. Students want to know, are they just working on your time, or can they take their time to engage and dive deep into their interests? In history class, I really like pushing some of these pieces where we end up doing some individual research. I want to give kids as much choice as possible. Now, I can't always do that, but when we have a spot, I want kids to look at things that pique their interest, people that pique their interest, science or technology, different discussions or speeches or historical figures. And where I can, I want to promote that, so it's relevant to them and it's worth their time as they see it. Timing is also important. So students want to know, are they stuck to a sequence or timing outside of their own? Is this just my decisions? Or can they explore and learn about things in an order that fits their style? I do try to implement some project-based learning throughout my semesters and my school year, and some of that gives them an ability to play around and try to figure out, how do I work through this? And if they get to design some of their final products, then the timing is a bit more on their side. Number 5 is to play. So the two thoughts: is there only pressure to do well and perform? Are we teaching to a test or assessment, those types of things that we've heard in the past? Or can they explore? Can they make mistakes and learn? And can they have the opportunity to experiment and enjoy their learning? In particular, like I said earlier, not everything can be play, but there are pieces that I really want students to find their own, to pick up and go through, especially in things like project-based learning. I also do interactive notebooks for my history class. So a lot of it is that they get to design, their own notebook page based on a couple of parameters that I set, that you have to have at least these things within your notebook page. And otherwise, it's up to you to go through that. So I do try to allow a lot of individuality, and I think that goes into play. Number 6 is practice. Students want to know, do they learn and move right along, or can they practice and use skills they're trying to learn, and can they develop? Within history class, this is not always straightforward, but there are reading practices, there are writing practices, there's critical thinking practices, and I try to recall and come back and use these through every unit that I teach, especially within the writing. And I try to tell the kids that this is going to build to something somehow. in their future, whether that's post-secondary education, a business report, something for the job. I want them to be prepared to think critically and to create something. 7 is choice. Students want to know, are they on the same path as all other students, or can they choose how, when, and on what they will demonstrate their learned abilities? Again, my project-based learning style and my notebooks within class, I think, give them some of this resemblance of choice. While the topic is, you know, either we're in a theme of history or we're in an era of history, um, there is that piece, but they get to choose how to design that, how to go about it. I also tried to give um, several variances of resource. So that way students have a couple different ways to learn, whether they're reading, they're watching, or they're interacting with something. I do try to give a couple of choices for them as they go through their materials. Number 8 is authenticity. Students want to know, is this just a worksheet or filler work? Um, or would someone realize their efforts outside the classroom? And is their hard work valued? So once a semester, I do try to make sure that we have something a bit larger from the class to display, to show to the rest of the school building, um, what students in history are putting together and working on. I am not a fan of worksheets. I tell the kids straight up, I was like, I don't want to send you home with a lot of homework, because I think the best interaction can be somewhere where we can communicate, work together, and build and learn together within the classroom. And sometimes I think that there is kind of a parameter on that. If you can't establish some of those things within the classroom, I wouldn't expect students to be able to take that work outside the classroom. Sorry. Number 9, challenge. Students want to know, is this just about completing the work? Again, kind of similar to just jumping through hoops. Or otherwise, can they find a challenge? Are they meeting high and meaningful standards? Something I talk about with our special education department that I work really closely with is, how do we make this work meaningful? Because if we're really looking at individual needs and growth, sometimes the A, B, C, D, F scale doesn't always apply to that, because we need to look at sometimes where a kid starts and where a kid gets to. And I think some of that really factors well into my project-based learning. And you want to see the growth most in a kid. And we want it to be meaningful. And if they feel like they're just jumping through hoops, oftentimes you won't find that meaning. And lastly, number 10 is application. Students want to know, is this just academic stuff? Is it fluff and filler and, kind of junk to them, stuff to fill their time as they're stuck in your classroom? Or can they apply and make use of their learning in a real world? And everywhere that I can find possible, I apply things to current events, to continuation, to economics, to a personal aspect, to interactions with other people. I want everything I do in my classroom to have some sort of resemblance to work, effort, learning, critical thinking outside of the classroom. My standard correlation, I'd say that this assignment definitely meets the standards of PLO 2 and CLO 2.1 by demonstrating how to incorporate student norms to further promote the success and well-being of each student. Providing student norms will provide a successful pathway, an inclusive, rigorous, and ethical classroom that builds towards achievement for each individual. I'd say it's relevant because this assignment addresses the creation and use of student norms. This is particularly relevant as it gives a new perspective to my current teaching within my classroom. The new perspective will help me to reflect and adapt my own practice as a professional and to provide the most beneficial learning space and styles of students. Just to kind of add an extra bit to that relevancy is I haven't thought about all 10 of those pieces for student engagement. I think about some of them very actively, not all. So this definitely was a relevant assignment where I continue to improve in my practice. And reflection. This assignment will help me as a future building leader, as it will not only be important for students to have these thoughts and expectations, but also to instruct and demonstrate these norms to the staff which I will be working with. To have a survey the student expectations and use that to mold and shape the professional norms of the classroom will benefit their overall educational environment. And this is my APA reference source. So thank you for watching my video.